Imagine living decades of your life, contributing to society, raising families, and building communities, only to feel neglected and abandoned in your later years. Unfortunately, this is the reality for many elderly people, and it can tragically lead to death. Today, I will be talking about a topic that is often overlooked in our society, the increasing rates of death by suicide in the population of those aged 65 and older in America. I spent the past 2 years obtaining my certificate in aging studies. I've been working with the Orange County Council on Aging since October of 2023, and I've done extensive research on this topic. First, I'll be going over the statistics. Then I'll be going over some of the contributing factors, and lastly, we'll be finding some solutions. While this is a sensitive topic, it requires conversation, so let's start with the stats. According to the National Council on Aging, or the NCOA, from 2021 to 2022, suicide deaths increased by 8.1% for those aged 65 and older. In contrast to this, the Center for Disease Control found that it decreased by 9% for those aged 15 to 24 and decreased drastically by 18% for those aged 10 to 14. Gerontologists have coined the term forgotten generation to describe older adults living in America, which is made evident by these alarming statistics. This next graph from the CDC shows the suicide rate per standard population of 100,000 people. It's made evident by this graph that those aged 85 and older have the highest suicide rate, followed by those aged 75 to 84. This next graph from Health Affairs shows the suicide rates of those aged 65 and older from the year 1999 to 2021. It's made evident by this graph that males have a higher crude suicide rate, with those aged 85 and older having the highest. These stats have strong implications for the future as Americans' lifespan increases. Joan Erber, author of Aging in Older Adulthood, said that in the 1900s, the average life expectancy was 49, while today the average life expectancy is 80 years. Average health span has been increasing as well, meaning not only are people living longer, but they're staying healthier in their later years. Now that we've established that this is a relevant issue, we will now be considering the causes. Health Affairs describes some unique stressors of aging, which include decline in physical health, reduced mental acuity, shrinking social networks, loss of friends and loved ones, as well as social isolation, physical impairment, and difficult economic circumstances. When I worked with a 92-year-old man during my time volunteering, he expressed to me that his suicidal ideation had stemmed from the anniversary of losing his wife, as well as from losing his daughter. For each individual, there may be unique and different risk factors which are very important to consider. The Suicide Prevention Resources Center says some additional risk factors include disability and pain, substance use issues, and depression. Researcher Zilka from Health Affairs found that a history of depression can leave elderly individuals with less stable family and social relations, making them more likely to have suicidal thoughts. Loneliness is another major indication of suicide risk and is often the most preventable, which will be discussed later. According to Dr. Dole, during a symposium facilitated through the NCOA, she says, "I believe that suicidal behavior in the elderly is rooted in loneliness. We have an epidemic of loneliness, of folks feeling disconnected from other people. So when we consider the physical factors, mental factors, and isolation, we can thoroughly address this issue. Where the harsh reality may be staggering, there are steps we could take to ensure that this pattern does not persist. First, I would like to talk about some factors that can contribute to a decrease in elderly suicide. One approach is targeting the loneliness epidemic. Erber describes the importance of peripheral social relations, which are social interactions between people who are seen regularly, but from whom extensive social support is not expected. Some examples of this is having a conversation with a regular at a restaurant or grocer at the store, talking to a familiar primary health care worker, or even just saying hi to a neighbor in passing. Pleasant social interactions fulfill emotional needs, which is very important in older adulthood for emotional regulation and emotional fulfillment. Another approach is educating caregivers, medical professionals, and family members about the warning signs of suicidal ideation in older adults. According to the NCOA, some of these behaviors include loss of interest in activities that were previously enjoyed, giving away items or changing a will, avoiding social activities, and neglecting self-care, hygiene, or medical regimens. Explicit suicidal intent may be expressed as well, in addition to exhibiting a preoccupation with death. According to the American Association of Retired Persons, an increase in drug and alcohol consumption may also be a sign for concern. Finally, it is important to know what to do if you are concerned about the well-being of an older adult in your life. The NCOA lists 5 different action steps. The first step is ask direct questions, like, have you been thinking about suicide and how can I help you? The second step is to be physically present with the individual. The third step is to find out if they've made any prior attempts on their life and limit their accessibility to hazardous items, including any and all medications. Number 4 is to connect them to resources. One great resource here is the Community Partners in Caring, which is a nonprofit that operates out of Santa Barbara. Number 5 is to follow up. And lastly, you can also refer them to the 988 suicide hotline. In conclusion, I informed you about the increasing rates of elderly suicide in our society. We started with the stats, then we identified reasons, and then we explored some solutions. I appreciate you all for listening to me talk about such a difficult topic and hope that you do not forget what you learned here today.